You don't get it, do you? His voice cracked as the boardroom fell silent. I'm not signing. Not today. Not ever. The camera flashes exploded like gunfire. His father's face turned ghost white. The woman in the back, the one no one was supposed to see, she was already walking toward the exit, tears streaming down her face. And that's when he said the words that would cost him everything. I choose her. Before this goes any further, if you've ever believed in taking a chance on someone, in choosing hard over comfort, please stay with us. Subscribing, liking, or sharing this story isn't about supporting a channel. It's about standing behind stories that remind us who we are. If that matters to you, even a little, stay. Julian Harcourt didn't just run an empire, he was the empire. At 34, he'd turned Harcourt Global into a $9 billion tech and real estate conglomerate that had reshaped skylines from Austin to Singapore. His face was on the cover of Forbes. His name was whispered in boardrooms with equal parts reverence and fear. He lived in a penthouse in downtown Austin with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Lady Bird Lake, and he hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in 6 years. He was exhausted, but no one was supposed to know that. Julian, the Miami acquisition closes in 2 weeks, his COO, Brett, says they sat in a private conference room at Harcourt Tower. We need you locked in. No distractions. Julian nodded absently, scrolling through his phone. Another gala. Another investor dinner. Another woman his mother had conveniently seated next to him. This time a senator's daughter with perfect teeth and zero personality. I'll be there, Julian said flatly. But he wouldn't be. Not really. Because 3 months ago, everything had changed. He'd walked into a Whole Foods on West 6th Street in Austin at 11 p.m. One of those rare nights he left the office before midnight. He wasn't there for groceries. He was there because he didn't want to go home to the silence. And that's when he saw her. She was standing in the cereal aisle, wearing paint-splattered overalls and holding a box of Lucky Charms like it was a philosophical debate. Marshmallows or no marshmallows, she muttered to herself. That is the question. Julian had smiled for the first time in weeks. Marshmallows, he'd said. She looked up, hazel eyes, messy auburn hair tied in a bun, freckles across her nose, and she laughed. Not the polite, calculated laugh he was used to. A real one. You seem very confident for a stranger in the cereal aisle. I'm confident about a lot of things. Let me guess, she'd said, tilting her head. Tech bro? Venture capitalist? Crypto guy who lost it all, and now you're starting over with cereal. He'd laughed. Actually laughed. Something like that. Her name was Devin Langley. 29. Freelance muralist. She painted massive, colorful pieces on the sides of buildings across Austin and Miami. Cities she traveled between because her younger brother, Micah, was finishing his senior year at the University of Miami, and she refused to let him feel alone. She had no idea who Julian was. And for the first time in his life, that felt like freedom. They started meeting. Late nights, quiet diners, walks along the lake. He never told her his last name. She never asked, "Why do you always look so tired?" Devin asked one night, as they sat on a bench near the Stevie Ray Vaughan statue. "I work a lot." "Doing what?" "Stuff that doesn't matter as much as I thought it did." She'd looked at him for a long time. "Then why do you do it?" He didn't have an answer, but she did. "You know what I think? I think you're scared to stop. Because if you stop, you'll have to figure out who you actually are." No one had ever said that to him before. And she was right. Over the next 2 months, Julian became two people. By day, he was a billionaire CEO, ruthless, calculating, untouchable. By night, he was just Julian, the guy who helped Devin paint a mural of wildflowers on the side of a community center in East Austin. The guy who learned to make terrible pancakes in her tiny apartment. The guy who, for the first time, felt awake. "I'm falling for you," he whispered one night, his forehead pressed against hers. "I know," she whispered back. "I'm falling too." But he still hadn't told her the truth. Devin had asked him once, while they were sitting on her fire escape watching the sunset, "You think people can really change? Or are we all just pretending until we can't anymore?" Julian didn't answer. But if you've ever hidden a part of yourself from someone you love because you were terrified of losing them, maybe you understand why he stayed silent. What would you have done? It all came apart in Miami. Julian had flown down for final signing of the Miami acquisition, a $600 million deal that would cement Harcourt Global as the dominant force in South Florida real estate. Devin had flown down the same week to finish a mural in Wynwood and visit Micah. She texted him, "I'm at Publix on Brick Hill. Want to meet for a walk after?" He texted back, "I'll be there." But he didn't make it, because as he sat in the glass-walled conference room of the Four Seasons, his father, the founder of Harcourt Global, the man who built everything, dropped a bomb. "Julian, I need you to marry Victoria Calloway." Julian looked up slowly. "What?" His father, Gregory Harcourt, didn't blink. "Her father controls the zoning boards in 3 counties. We marry you into that family. We own South Florida. It's business. I'm not marrying anyone. You don't have a choice. Not if you want to keep this company. The board's already discussed it. You marry Victoria, or we vote you out." Julian's blood went cold. "You do that? I built this empire," Gregory said quietly, "and I'll protect it, even from you." Julian didn't go to Publix. He called Devin from his car, his hands shaking. "I can't see you tonight. Is everything okay?" "No, it's not." There was a long pause. "Julian, what's going on?" "I need to tell you something, but not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow?" "Of course." But tomorrow never came, because that night a photo leaked. Julian Harcourt, Billionaire CEO, seen multiple times with an unknown woman in Austin and Miami. The tabloids went wild. His father was furious. The board called an emergency meeting, and Devin, sitting in her brother's dorm room, scrolling through her phone, saw his face on the news. Julian Harcourt, CEO of Harcourt Global, is reportedly being pressured by his family to marry socialite Victoria Calloway to secure a major real estate deal. Her hands trembled. She texted him, "Who are you?" He didn't reply, because he was already in a car racing to find her. He found her at Micah's apartment near the University of Miami campus. She opened the door. Her eyes were red. "You're Julian Harcourt." "Yes." "You lied to me." "I didn't lie. You let me believe you were someone else." Her voice cracked. "I told you everything, Julian. I told you about my parents dying, about raising Micah by myself, about why I paint, because it's the only thing that makes me feel like I'm not drowning. And you." She stopped, tears spilling over. "You were playing pretend." "I wasn't pretending," he said, stepping forward. "Everything I felt, everything I feel, that's real." "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was terrified," he said, his voice breaking. "Terrified that if you knew who I was, you'd see me the way everyone else does. Like I'm just a name. Just money. Just nothing." She stared at him. "You're not nothing, Julian. But you're also not mine. You have a whole life I'm not part of. An empire. A fiancé. I'm not marrying her. Your father. I don't care what my father wants." Devin shook her head, tears streaming. "You say that now, but when you're back in that boardroom, when they threaten to take everything you built, you'll choose them, because that's who you are." "No," Julian said, his voice raw. "You're who I am." Devin looked at him with so much pain in her eyes, and she said, "Love isn't enough if you're not brave enough to fight for it." And maybe that's the truth we all avoid. Maybe we've all stood at that crossroads, where we had to choose between what's safe and what's real. Have you ever walked away from something because you were too afraid to lose everything else? Drop a comment, because this story is about to test them both. The next morning, Julian walked into the Harcourt Global boardroom in Miami. His father sat at the head of the table. The board members lined both sides. Victoria Calloway sat in the corner, looking bored. "Glad you could join us," Gregory said coldly. "Now let's get this done." "I'm not signing," Julian said. The room went silent. "Excuse me? I'm not marrying Victoria. I'm not closing the deal. I'm done." Gregory stood slowly. "You're done? You built this with me. You're going to throw it all away for some girl?" "She's not some girl," Julian said, his voice steady. "She's the only real thing I've had in years. And I'm not losing her for this." "You lose everything." "Then I lose everything." Gregory's jaw tightened. "The board will vote you out. You'll have nothing." Julian looked around the room, at the faces of men and women who'd smiled at him for years but never really seen him. "Then I'll have nothing," Julian said. "But I'll have her, and that's more than I've ever had here." He turned and walked out. The camera flashes exploded. Within 48 hours, Julian Harcourt was no longer CEO. The board voted him out. His father stripped his name from the company. His assets were frozen pending legal battles. The penthouse, the cars, the private jet, gone. He moved into a small apartment in South Beach. And he called Devon. "I walked away," he said when she answered. Silence. "I walked away from all of it. Because you were right. I was scared. But I'm not anymore." "Julian, I don't know what happens next. I don't know who I am without that company. But I want to find out. With you, if you'll let me." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "Where are you?" "Miami." "Stay there." Devon showed up at his apartment 2 hours later. She didn't say anything at first. Just looked at him. This man who'd given up $1 billion empire. And shook her head. "You're an idiot," she said. "I know. You gave up everything." "I gave up nothing," he said. "I gave up a life that was killing me." She stepped forward, her hand reaching for his. "So what now?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I want to figure it out. With you." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "You're really bad at pancakes, you know that?" "I know." "And you snore." "I do not." She kissed him. And for the first time in his life, Julian Harcourt fell whole. 6 months later, Julian and Devon opened a nonprofit in Miami and Austin called Canvas and Capital, a program that taught underserved kids business skills through art. They funded it with the settlement Julian received after suing his father for unlawful termination. It wasn't billions, but it was enough. Devon painted murals across both cities, each one brighter than the last. Julian worked with the kids, teaching them coding, finance, entrepreneurship. But this time, with heart, Micah graduated and joined them. And one night, as they sat on the roof of their new office in Wynwood, watching the sunset, Devon turned to him. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "The empire?" Julian looked at her, at the paint on her hands, at the smile that had saved him. "Not for a second," he said. "Really? Really?" He kissed her forehead. "I didn't lose anything. I found everything." Devon once told Julian, "The bravest thing you can do is choose love when the whole world is betting you won't." And maybe that's a lesson. Maybe we're all one choice away from a completely different life. If you've ever chosen love over logic, sacrifice over safety, or freedom over fear, leave a comment, because that choice, that's the real empire. A year later, Julian proposed to Devon on the same bench in Austin, where she'd first told him he was scared to stop. She said yes. They got married in a tiny ceremony at a community center they'd helped renovate, walls covered in murals, kids running around, Micah giving the toast. And when someone at the reception asked Julian if he ever regretted walking away from Harcourt Global, he didn't hesitate. "Not for a second," he said, pulling Devon close. "I didn't walk away from an empire. I walked into one." She smiled. And for the first time in his life, Julian Harcourt regretted nothing. Sometimes the richest life is the one you build from scratch, with love, with courage, with someone who sees you, not your name, not your money, just you. If this story touched you in any way, if it made you feel something, pause for a moment, or see life a little differently, please don't let it end here. These stories take heart, time, and care to create, and your support is what keeps them alive. Subscribing, liking, or sharing isn't just a click. It's a quiet way of saying this mattered. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, please stay with us.